Lights on. Okay, let's say a word of prayer. Lord Jesus, we're thankful for this day and opportunity to do your service. Lord, you said you should know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. And that's what we're interested in accomplishing here today, in Jesus' name. What we're going to do, we're just going to record a bunch of stuff here, and we can do some more tomorrow. If we forget something today, it doesn't matter, we can put it in. If you think of something in 20 minutes that should have been said right up front, it doesn't matter.
Great.
We are simply wanting to reduce this down to tape so that it doesn't get lost.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And the big job lays ahead. That's the editing. Okay? So I want you to completely relax. There is nothing that can't be done, redone. If we sneeze, if we cough, if, you know, anything.
That's reassuring.
If the ceiling caves in, all we do is clean up the mess and keep going.
Okay.
So everything here is real laid back. You've got a lot of information, and we want to get this down into a storyline, because I think what you've got here is something that is extremely important for people to know about.
Yeah, it is.
All right. Let's talk a little bit about you, and let's see now. Where'd you start out your life? You were born and raised in the country?
Yeah, I was raised on a farm. In fact, I live in the same neighborhood in which I grew up. It was my grandfather's farm. Part of it was divided into thirds. But in 1939, my grandfather was an obstetrician in Norfolk. He was also in the Naval Reserves. He was in charge of military intelligence in Norfolk, which is the largest military naval complex in the world. So I was born in the Naval Hospital, which was the NATO headquarters, and brought home to my grandparents' farm. My father was in the South China Seas on a naval vessel. My uncle was in the Navy. So I come from a long line of military civilian folks. They were not full time military individuals. They had jobs, and they would go into the war. They would be in reserves, and as my grandfather was, he stayed in and retired a Navy captain. But I live in a house that was in part of my grandfather's field. And yeah.
That's very interesting.
But I'm being strangled financially by this Army intelligence group, JAG group, that my husband.
No, JAG, is that J-A-G? JAG,
Judge Advocate General. I think American citizens do not realize how many JAGs are in our court system, and they take orders. They are in the chain of command, they're active reserve, and they are in our court system everywhere you look.
Not just federal, state and local?
Everywhere, yeah. And they're going to meetings once a month, and if there is a case like many of the military intelligence wives like myself, and we have information that would come out in a divorce hearing or whatever, they totally control it. It is Judge John Moore, in my case, in Virginia Beach, is an Army Ranger. He is active reserve. He's a VMI Army colonel. He's a graduate of VMI. In Virginia Beach, in the courts, there are at least 6 judges, and I'm including commissioners in that, because in Virginia we have a system where the commissioners do a lot of the decisions, and all of these in Virginia Beach who take care of military wives are military judges.
No, you mentioned the term VMI. What is that?
Well, VMI is Virginia Military Institute, and it's where General Marshall, the Marshall Plan, went to school. It's a little West Point. There's a lot of tradition there, but it's based on the Greek sort of Spartan military concept. And my father went to Washington and Lee, which is also in Lexington, and I know that there is some sort of, I won't say cult, but there probably is some sort of
club?
Secret society.
Okay.
And so it's very, very tight clique. But what I was trying to say is that the judges are military men, and they're not independent. They take orders.
They take orders.
There's a chain of command, and in my particular case and the other 11 military wives whom I have met so far, there are many, many more, but they've all been handled the same way.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a normal divorce at all.
Yeah, I've heard of these kind of situations before, but it's never been put so concisely and so reasonably that there would be a connection why some people just, no matter what attorney you have, it doesn't matter.
Oh, no.
The divorces and the settlements of assets never go the right way.
No, and there's a FISA court, which I know is involved in my case.
What kind of court?
Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. It's a Justice Department secret court that American citizens are not aware of. There have been a couple of articles on it. It's a small group of men, and I think there's a woman on it. I believe there's 7 justices. And in reality, the article that I read, which was given to me by Mike Fuller, and I know he would not mind me using his name, he's a government assassin. He was like my husband, a government assassin who did...
When you say assassin, you're talking like character assassination or kill people?
No, killing people.
Okay.
He's a mercenary, government mercenary.
Okay.
He was in Afghanistan and in Rhodesia, South Africa. And I met him and his wife through Sarah McClendon. He's a real wonderful patriot who is speaking out about what the NATO community and the Army and Marine Corps are doing.
And Sarah McClendon, she's an old war horse, isn't she?
Sarah saved my life, literally.
Really?
Yeah. I had been having break-ins starting the night of March the 4th, after I was calling everywhere to see if I could find my husband. He would, disappear at times. And I found my husband's diary, which I have here, which they have been not anxious to have get out.
Uh-huh. No, they meaning?
General Sheehan, General Krulak, Marine Corps colonels, generals, Al Gray, Cook, and especially General Joy.
Joy.
General Jim Joy.
Uh-huh.
And General Carl Steiner they're evil men. And they are in this diary meeting with my husband almost every day in Beirut. They trained the men in black who killed those people in Waco. It was General Joy and General Steiner. Steiner's army, dirty tricks, special operations. And this is what my husband does for a living, is train mercenaries, young boys from countries like Romania, Cuba, Dominican Republic, Haiti, all these countries. They're training them to be murderers, and the taxpayers' dollars are paying for this.
Okay, now they train them just through the normal channels of the military. These kids join the Army or the Marine Corps, And then they select these kids based on some criteria to train them?
They psychologically profile them. The profile, which is similar to my husband's and Lee Harvey Oswald's and McVeigh's and some of the others who were all part of this program. Jeffrey Dahmler was profiled and hidden. You know, what most Americans do not know is that all of these men were
Jeffrey
Army.
Dahmer, he has a military background?
Of course, they're all Army.
Oh, okay.
They were all picked out because they're perverted or twisted.
Oh.
Yeah.
Sexually perverted.
Sexually perverted and therefore, you know.
Yeah.
Well, now I don't think McVeigh was perverted the way Dahmler was, but certainly the group that my husband is overseeing are twisted.
So part of the criteria, they look for people who have got something in their history that gives them a weird bend.
Yeah.
Like they were molested when they were a child,
Yeah.
or they come from dysfunctional families, abuse, whatever.
Strong mother, weak father, no father, poor. Because these guys are looking for security, so they will stay in the military and do anything for that security. This was my husband's scenario. My husband and Oswald are just two peas in a pod.
Oh.
Exactly the same personality, the same type, in the same elite group, I might add, which was doing work with communists and Russians, with Czechoslovakians and with Romanians. I met assassins, I met drug lords, Fahim Kordobawi, whose family were the drug lords in the Bekaa Valley. I mean, he knows the elite of the elite of the elite, and that's why I was warned twice not to talk.
And you were warned...
I was told that I would be killed. I was told that
Your husband warned you about this, or?
Oh, my husband warned me early on, but he knew that he loved me in the beginning. I'm sure he really did. But he's a robot, my husband, except when he's drinking. And I think that's why he drank, because the first 3 years of marriage, he was telling me everything. And I come from a very strong Protestant Southern culture, which, you know, when you're talking about shooting people like ducks, the only thing I can relate it to is my brothers going duck hunting, and that's what George would tell me it was like. Killing is just, you know, it's nothing. There's no emotion involved. You just get rid of somebody. And he said he was an existentialist and that these murders were necessary, and, you know, very matter of fact. And I'd sort of go, yep, and we'd be eating dinner, and I was trying to get him to know Christ, you know, to sort of understand a little bit about my background and America's background. But his group they are not Christians. They're what he calls existentialists, and they study German Clausewitz and Nietzsche, Sartre, Camus, Montesquieu. And his thesis at Princeton, which was written for him by a very good friend of his named Todeve, who was a French count, and his thesis was on this. And it was, supposedly it was in French, but my French is better than his. So he could not have written that by himself. I know that. I know it was written for him. But in the intelligence world, and in the communist world, in the world that my husband was in, one had to know French, because all of the terrorist trainers and the guys who were funding all the guerrillas and everything were in Paris and New Orleans. They would go back and forth. Still, the 4th Marines is out of New Orleans, and that's been going on a long time, ever since Disraeli, even before, I think. But they had hit squads and, you know, undercover groups in New Orleans. And George would go to New Orleans, all the Marines. I mean, this is where they train, do terrorist training, Lake Pontchartrain and places like that.
Okay, and then this would be during the 1980s?
Yeah, 1980s.
Okay.
From I think New Orleans has been a school for a place where debauchery and murder and cults and
Flourished.
yeah.
Well, there's a New Orleans connection with the JF Kennedy assassination.
Well, you see, Oswald, my husband and Oswald were in the same club. General Jim Joy is in that club. General Louis Buell, who is my husband's benefactor, or whatever you want to call it, is in that club. There is in fact, I've got the name of, there are Russians in that club.
Yeah, feel free to grab any reference materials.
Yeah. What I want to tell you about General Al Gray, my husband was the chief of staff for General Al Gray, who was the commandant of the Marine Corps. And I probably shouldn't say this on the tape, and you all can get rid of it, but he's a homosexual.
Gray.
Gray.
Okay.
He's what they call a cherry Marine. Now, I'm not anti. I'm trying to find my. I hope I've got it. Yeah, here it is.
Now, this
Vietnam
term cherry Marine,
Cherry Marine.
That's a common phrase in the military?
See, the thing is, they're guys and they're girls, and I just came from such a real prudish culture.
Yeah.
You know.
That's fine. You came from a normal culture.
And I'm not judging them, but the Vietnam War, I know a lot about that, about the MACSOG program and the Phoenix program, because George was involved with a very important part of that. Not important, really, but he and Al Gray and Louis Buell and Michael O'Boyle and Ollie Whipple were. Do you remember the Manguez and the Pueblo? Was it the
the seizure of that little ship?
Yes.
Yeah.
This was. It's run by the mob. Then it was a mob military partnership, joint. It was a joint operation in Korea and in Vietnam. The highest levels of the Marine Corps and the Army in those special operations levels, the individuals are actually in the mob. New Jersey.
You're talking about the mafia type mob?
I'm talking about the Brooklyn, New Jersey mob. My husband, Al Gray, Sheehan, they're all Brooklyn. Cap Weinberger. The Heinz Kissinger, there's the Boston mob, which was shipping weapons back and forth to Northern Ireland. And I don't want to get too deeply involved in that, but it goes, Israel, some of the Zionists who came over from Germany, according to my husband, were, see, he works with those people. They do a lot of money laundering in the banks, cash transactions for the drugs that they're bringing over through Latin America, the Southern Mafia, the Dixie Mafia, which is now my husband's involved with in Miami. The military are all involved once they retire. They're, they go into this drug and secondary weapons sales. And before I forget, I want to find the name of this Russian who worked with Al Gray, who was my husband's boss, and trying to see where I wrote it. I may have to look and find that another.
It's no trouble at all. How are we doing over there, guys? Sound good? How much time is rolled on the clock? On your clock? You can speak. So
20 minutes.
20? Okay, good.
I can't find it right now. I'll find it.
Right.
The Vietnam was really important because a lot of experiments were done on boys who went over there.
Mm-hmm.
I had, since my husband disappeared and since they have been psychologically trying to destroy me, financially trying to destroy me, because I'm telling the truth. His first wife, I know, was murdered.
Okay.
She was, according to a psychiatrist whose name I probably won't give because he's an honorable man. I was given permission before I went public with Sarah McClendon at the press club anonymously, but they knew who I was on the 3rd of July, 1996, was when I came out with a small group of people. But before that time, they were trying to handle me, to try and get me to be quiet. They tried threatening me and so forth. And I'm trying to remember where I was, what I was going to, the point I was going to make. I can't remember now what I was going to, it was something important. Oh, yeah, General Jim Joy.
Yeah.
I called General Jim Joy on the phone. I was trying to find where my husband was because I didn't know whether I'd have any money to, food to eat or what. He just walked away, and I knew that the Marine Corps knew where he was. But I was being handled psychologically. On the 4th of March, my home was broken into. They had elaborate plans to handle me.
The 4th of March, 96?
1996.
96.
And keep in mind, he had disappeared on the 28th of December.
Of 96.
Of 96, 95.
Okay,
So put yourself in my shoes. I have no idea where he is. He's done this before, and each time I was totally traumatized. So I get...
What happened during this break-in?
Well, they were looking for the diary, which I have here.
Okay.
I don't have the original copy, but this is the diary.
Okay, can you lift it up so
Yeah,
you can...
sure.
Yeah, just
This is it. It's his Beirut diary.
kind of hold those.
Yeah. This is it.
Okay.
And it's in his handwriting. The Beirut diary tells how the intelligence community, the Army and Marine Corps assassins, snipers, are how they operate in a city during a crisis. My husband was the liaison between the White House and President Jamal. So my husband is a friend of Scrokoff, McFarland's a Marine. All of these men are personal friends of George's. Colby, I spoke with personally on the phone. 2 weeks later, he was murdered. He went to Princeton. My husband knew him. He knew my husband. He told me, Colby told me that...
Now, this is General Colby?
No, this is William Colby, who was head of the CIA.
Oh, okay, yes.
Who was murdered in a...
so-called boating
I
accident.
know exactly how that happened because, you see, the SEAL teams, SEAL Team 6, 4, 6, and 8 are on the East Coast, and then the odd numbers are on the West Coast. And some of the people who are affiliated with the SEALs, I shouldn't say that. I'm not going to say it, but...
Well, it wouldn't be hard for a SEAL to come from underwater and tip the boat over and make sure the man's dead, that sort of thing?
The Israelis train with the SEALs. They do a lot of wet ops, murders,
Okay.
over here because of some sort of arrangement. The young boys, I met 3 young assassins on a bus, going up back and forth to Sarah as I went on the bus, because they were sabotaging my car so often. So I sat next to 2 young assassins, one from Romania, one from Haiti. And I let them know that I understand, you know, how it is. And this little boy cried. I won't mention which one it was, because it may get back to him. But he told me it was the same scenario. His mother, he lives on $850 a month. Now, these are mercenaries working. The taxpayers are paying mercenaries. The taxpayers are paying young men who are not citizens of the United States to kill innocent people, women and children. They get on a flight from Norfolk and Oceana. They fly to Stuttgart, and I was told this is what they do. Then they go by a special helicopter to countries like Turkey, like the part of Iraq, to Algeria, to parts of Africa, and they do wet ops. They'll just, you know, murder 5, 10, 20 people, and then they blame it on the Arabs, or they blame it on somebody else, but it's actually NATO rogue assassins, because there are men from Australia, South Africa, Britain, that I've been able to determine, and a lot of these other little countries that are sort of wanting to get into NATO, they have little boys that they pick out, and they call them special. They use the word special, meaning elite, irregular, in order to entice these boys, because they don't have much ego. So if you call being a criminal, in other words, they are protected. They know that they are above the law. That's what my husband's above the law. Judge John Moore is above the law. Colonel Barry Cantor, my husband's JAG colonel lawyer, is above the law. Grover Wright, Marine Corps. A lot of these guys who were judges had their wives gotten rid of. Judge John Moore had his first wife thrown into a mental institution before he became a judge. He battered her. And I spoke with a man who has a Purple Heart, 2 people who knew Hannah very well. And Hannah Moore was deeply in love with her husband. He got back from Vietnam. He was an Army Ranger. He battered her. He physically and psychologically abused her. And she started screaming, you know, doing what because I was battered and bruised. A lot of wives are by these Vietnam vets. But if they're a colonel, or if they're a rising star, the wife has got to be crazy, because they've got too much invested in these men. And it's a very small cult. I mean, I have heard the things that they do when they're colonels. It's some of the same things that they do in Cap and Gown, which is the Princeton version of Skull and Bones. My husband went to Princeton after he went to the Hun School for 4 years.
Okay, now we should probably clarify a little bit about, you mentioned Skull and Bones, and many of the people wouldn't be familiar with that, and the Cap and Gown. So what are these clubs that these young inductees are pulled into? Secret societies?
Secret societies. And
again, is this to make them feel super special?
Yes.
And also put a control on them,
Yes.
so that you never tell these secrets?
Yes. That's it. You have got it.
You know, I've heard a lot of child molesters. I mean, people who are not connected with the military, just plain old child molesters, will molest a child and then tell them, now if you ever tell, You know, they'll take a cat and strangle it and kill it or something. This is what I'm going to do to your mother. This is what I'll do to you.
Yes.
Bad things will happen if you ever tell.
That's right.
And children grow up believing that I must never ever tell, and they don't generally.
That's right.
Unless someone comes along to help them see the light and come out of it.
Yes.
And what happens is that you have the cover-up. There are so many stories where the story of this Satanism and this child abuse starts to come to light, and immediately the lid goes on because the system controls the various aspects that can keep the lid on. This is just one example. There's endless numbers around the world. The Franklin cover-up. It was an investigation by this guy, John W. DeCamp, who was former state senator in Nebraska, and he started investigating this guy, Lawrence King, a major Republican who sang the American national anthem in 1984 and 1988, I think it was, at the Republican convention. And he was investigating him for financial fraud through an organization called the Franklin Savings and Loans. But then he discovered that he's running a pedophile ring and providing children for the biggest names in America. And he wrote this book, The Franklin Cover-Up, Child Abuse, Satanism, again, they go together all the time, and murder in Nebraska. And what happened? Some of it got into this Washington Times, a mainstream newspaper, the connection to the Reagan-Bush administration, but most of it was totally covered up. I've been writing in my books now since 1998 that Father George Bush is a notorious pedophile, child torturer, child killer, and serial killer of adults as well. Said it on American radio. Still waiting for a response. And this is one example. A lady who became a friend of mine, Kathy O'Brien, who was in the American government mind control project since she was a kid. And met her many times. She still corresponds with me now and again. And I've met a daughter that she was talking about. Lovely, lovely girl. Totally shattered by these people. And that's one example of millions and millions that are going on around the world. And this is what she said in a book, Transformation of America. Kelly's bleeding rectum was but one of many physical indicators of George Bush's pedophile perversions. I have overheard him speak blatantly of his sexual abuse of her on many occasions. He used this and threats to her life to pull my strings and control me. The psychological ramifications of being raped by a pedophile president are mind-shattering enough. But reportedly, Bush further reinforced the traumas to Kelly's mind with sophisticated NASA electronic and drug mind control devices. Bush also instilled the "who you're gonna call and I'll be watching you" binds on Kelly, further reinforcing her state of helplessness. The systematic tortures and trauma that I endured as a child now seem trite by comparison. They're not. I know what she went through. To the brutal physical and psychological devastation that George Bush inflicted on my daughter. And that's just one of these people involving one of the victims of this. It's incredible, the scale of it, and it's going on in this country. And what happens? The wall goes up. This is what DeCamp found. Suddenly ranks are pulled in, and the media won't touch it, the social services won't touch it, the police won't touch it, politicians won't touch it. It's the blueprint, it's how it works. And the Discovery Channel program, produced by Yorkshire Television, was about to go to air, exposing that Franklin cover-up and the pedophile connections. Bingo, it was censored and pulled just before it was going to air. Never to see the light of day, although you can get it on the internet, because one copy survived.
Okay, that tells you a little bit about cults and satanic cults and preschools. By the way, Dr. Roland Summit, psychiatrist at UCLA, has told me that he's also involved in these issues, that he has intelligence information and otherwise that there are more than 50 preschools around the country where they claim that there's been sexual ritual abuse, and tunnels are located under the schools, more than 50 of them. The McMartin family traveled all over the world because they were experts in putting preschools together, organizing them, showing them how to build the schools and so forth. There were more than 5,500 children went through this McMartin school from the time it was built in 1966 until 1983, when this incident was alleged to have taken place. The cults use these 2-, 3-, and 4-year-old children for several purposes. Number one, they use them for pornographic films. There's a lot of money, $10 billion a year, pornographic business in this country. They use them in their initiation. They consider them initiated into the cult, even though their parents don't know about it. And they use them as part of their ceremonies. In other words, they need children in certain ceremonies. Now, I've been told, well, now don't tell me the kids, if they witnessed a human sacrifice or the sacrifice of a baby, that they wouldn't go home and tell their parents about it. But I'll tell you what a little girl in the McMartin case told me. And she told her mother, and her mother told me. She told her mother that she witnessed these sacrifices, and that on one occasion, after her mother dropped her off in the morning and before the mother picked her up at night, she was taken to her bedroom, back to her home. They went into the house. They sexually molested her in the home, in the bedroom. They left a little token there. They took her little baby kitten, took the kitten into the school, and had a ceremony and sacrificed the kitten in front of her. Then they told the little girl, they said, if you talk to your mother or your father, we're going to do this to your mother, your father, and your little brother. Now, don't tell me that a kid's going to talk under those conditions. They're petrified. They also talked about men coming in and sexually molesting them dressed in police uniforms, dressed as Santa Claus, and so forth. I'm sorry to say that the Bureau has changed. There's no question about it. The FBI today, in 1996, is being used by the politicians to further their gains and their goals. So, there are a few things that have happened to me, some major matters that have happened to me since my retirement. And most recently, I was giving a lecture in Las Vegas, and I sat at the head table next to a gentleman. And this gentleman, in his day, had been in naval intelligence, and he was telling me that on December the 4th, 1941, 3 days before Pearl Harbor, he was in the communications room in Washington, D.C., a naval intelligence officer, and we received, the U.S. government received a communication, an intercept of Japanese message that had been sent, and we had broken the Japanese code, and this message stated that we were going to bomb Pearl Harbor on December the 7th. He was very elated to have received this. He passed it up to his superior. His superior passed it on. After the war was over, he came back to Washington, D.C., and was told he was going to have to testify. They had a congressional hearing on this. He was given a subpoena. His boss called him in and said, even though you have a subpoena, you're not going to testify. And he said, well, I don't understand this. He says, look, you don't understand now, someday you will. You're not going to testify. And he didn't testify. Now, it's been documented, and I've heard it on a number of occasions, that we knew about Pearl Harbor in advance. This is the first time I've had information directly from a person who was aware of this. I also received some information recently in my tours and lectures and what have you. I did a TV show in Long Beach, California. One of the gentlemen involved in the show was in the U.S. Army at one time. He told me that in the spring of 1973, we had bombed all of the North Vietnamese supply lines. We had mined their harbors. They were cut off. And one of his associates was in the communication room in Saigon. And this is, of course, a classified job. And when he was in this room, he received this message from the North Vietnamese: we surrender unconditionally. He passed it on to his superiors, and all Army personnel were immediately ushered out and replaced by State Department personnel. It was shortly thereafter that Kissinger met with the North Vietnamese officials in Paris, France. Why do these things happen? Why did we not take advantage of the advance notice of Pearl Harbor? And why is it necessary for us to be subservient to North Vietnam when we obviously have won? I think at the end of this lecture, you may have the answer. In fact, I'm sure you'll have the answer. I think you'll understand much better than you do and have in recent years.
And you see, my husband is frightened to death. I believe that his brother was murdered to keep him in, because he had gone through 4 years of this mind control. And the man who did it, you can see this on the video, his name was Charles Caddick, and another man named Alexander Robinson.
Okay, Charles Caddick.
Caddick.
And the other one?
Alexander Robinson. Alexander Robinson was a Marine, very well-connected Presbyterian family, whose family member was the influential one who brought over the Saudis. The original Saudi head of Saudi Arabia was George told me all this about Mohammed Faisal, Khalid Faisal, and Saud Faisal, and there were something like 32 brothers of the then in the mid-50s, the ordained, whoever was head of Saudi Arabia. It was actually the United States who chose that person because the United States, through Charles Caddick and that group, murdered the good one, the one whom everybody liked, who was well educated, and who was normal. In, I believe it was 1952, 1953, 1954, in Paris, the universal Saudi, the well-educated Saudi, was poisoned.
And what was his name?
Charles Caddick.
I don't suppose it's all important, but anyway.
I'm trying to remember. I think it was Fahim, or he died in Paris. And so his brother, his half-brother or whatever, was the father of all these 32 boys, and the 3 oldest now were snuck into the United States. I have a degree in history, Virginia history, undergraduate degree, and master's in Scottish history. And being a Southerner, we always look at, past as prologue. And I jumped into the Saudi Arabian books to try and find out something about the Hun School, which is in Princeton, started by a physicist connected with Einstein in that group. So I was looking for the Hun School because I knew they went there. And they're in all the brochures. They're very proud to say, we have the Saudi royals went here. President Cheeseborough brags about going over there and being wined and dined, and So I only found one reference, but it was a reference that said something like they went to a prep school in the United States. That's all they said. Well, it was the Hun School, and my husband was one of the playmates. Charles Caddick was the bodyguard, quote-unquote teacher for these guys. So they would go out and play in the woods, and they were doing homosexual things with them. I mean, there was a lot of money. They bought a big house.
Yeah.
And so.
Okay, now, I was momentarily distracted.
Okay.
Explain to me a little bit about this, the homosexual event here.
Well, George, for the first 3 years of our marriage, was drinking entirely too much, and he was trying to let me know about his world, and I'm not judging him. He's a bisexual.
Okay, and he needed help.
He needed help. He needed love. He needed pride. He still does. He really needs help, and the handlers knew that I was changing him. I was taking him away from this crazy cult that he'd been in all these years. And I mean, we were going to church. He even walked down the aisle one time when Tony Evans preached at Scope. I mean, he was overwhelmed. And
at Scope? No,
at Scope in Norfolk. It's a big auditorium.
Okay.
And so, but he was a little boy when he was, it's mind control. MK Ultra, somebody said, They had a group of men, psychiatrists in New Jersey. I don't know where this place was, but they would go, and even his roommates in Princeton told me about it. George never, intentionally, he never introduced me to any of his friends. So I had to cold call all these people. I got their names and addresses, telephone numbers. I called all these roommates at the Hun School and at Princeton.
Mm-hmm.
They told me things about George and, holding hands with, with Caddick and other people, about being a cheerleader and going off and so forth.
Now, a cheerleader, this is a kind of a trade name, right?
No, he was a cheerleader for the
At Princeton.
At Princeton.
Okay.
And he traveled with the football team.
Okay.
And here is a guy like that. They put him in the Marine Corps. I don't think that was very nice. Do you know what I'm saying? It was hard for him. But
it was part of the long-term vision.
Absolutely. They wanted him long-term. And it's because of the Saudis. This is what I believe and what his roommate believes. He had a roommate at Princeton who was also at the Hun, who's a dear, dear, wonderful. His mother is an Anglican. His father was a Jewish doctor from Brooklyn, and Jack is a dear. And we talk to each other a lot on the phone. George sort of, dismissed him because George was getting in with another crowd. George got into Cap and Gown, which is the same kind of fraternity. I mean, it's an eating club at Princeton for intelligence officers.
It's Cap and Gown. Would they have anybody involved that wasn't intelligence-oriented?
Football players and so forth. But I have a feeling that Cap and Gown has a lot of intelligence officers and boys who may have been raped. Of course, they'd never talk about it.
Right.
But I know that the initiation is, they get very drunk, and even in the Marine Corps they do that. It's called dining in. They have the shellback ceremony. They do a lot of homosexual enticement. The boys are, when they come in, when they're new recruits, they strip them nude, they violate their personal parts. There's a lot of that is going on.
What about
even now?
Tailhook?
Yeah.
Is there a connection?
Yeah, sure, because the cream of the crop is doing this. They're having group sex parties.
And that was a Navy operation too, wasn't it?
Yeah, but the Navy and the Marine Corps.
Of course not. Maybe we ought to, for those
That's another.
that tailhook, they don't know anything about. Tailhook was refresh our memories.
Well, tailhook. In fact, I when I was single in Norfolk, I know one of the people who was deeply involved with tailhook, who was the captain of the Saratoga, was very much involved with this kind of behavior, and I know a lot about the. See, I never thought about group sex. This is so awful for me to contemplate that these orgies are going on all over the Mediterranean, that the captains, lieutenants, the men who rise to the top are the ones who are picked to play the games, the pool parties, the nude pool parties. And they have secretaries who come in. I've talked to 3 guys, and of course my husband, who went to these parties. But what they do is, and this is General Al Gray, who was the main prime mover, they would go to a place like Aix-les-Rosés, where Charles Caddick, this teacher who got my husband into it, he retired in one of these all-male party houses on the Mediterranean. I mean, that's where and my husband kept up with him all through the years.
But these sex parties and orgies, they're all homosexual in nature, or is there some heterosexual?
They start off with the wild secretaries. It's kind of, my husband did those in Indonesia. He did them at a place in Northern Virginia with his first wife. I did not know any of this. I knew absolutely none of this when I married him. He told me he was loyal to his wife. He wanted me to think he was just apple pie, because I'm just a one-man woman.
Right.
When I took that oath to marry him, love, honor, and obey, that's me. But he, when he was married to his first wife, was just an addict. He was a sexual addict, an alcoholic addict. He loves, terror, and his whole little soul was just being sucked away from him desperately. And he needs Christ. He needed me day in and day out. He did not need to be. What he's doing now is running more of these operations.
As you describe this, I can't help but think of Bill Clinton.
Well, of course he was. He was one of those profile boys. But the difference between Bill Clinton, and I'm not saying Bill Clinton's better, but Bill Clinton did not he didn't know anything about the assassinations. Bill Clinton, when I was living with Sarah McClendon, the senior White House correspondent who saved my life, because she said, Mrs. Griggs, you get up here to Washington right now or you're dead. You're going to be dead. And I still feel as though I probably will be. I'll certainly be financially ruined. They are still doing psychological operations in my home, sabotaging my car, messing with my telephone, my radio. You cannot believe what I've been through in the last 2 years. It is horrible. And it's being done to other women and other wives and other men who don't go along with the program. They are murdering Marines, they're murdering sailors.
These are the tactics that they use. They criticize the government. Some of the people that they pull out of the woodwork in order that they will be accepted in patriot circles. And then these people criticize people like me. They think they can be accepted, and it discredits me. Now, is this COINTELPRO program and this disinformation program on the internet, has it affected my life? You bet it has. Because I'm not being invited to these big conferences anymore where I could give a lecture in front of 300, 400, 500 people. This is exactly what the rogue, covert, criminal government enterprise wants. That's why they do it. So what's the reward for me? Now I'm going to tell you what's happened to me in the last 30 years. And I'm not telling you this because I'm looking for pity or I'm looking for sympathy or anything. These are facts. Okay? Anyway, what's happened to me, I've had 3 contracts on my life. Okay? I've had 2 other probable contracts. And I will give you just a little detail about the contracts that were put on me so that you will understand it's not just talk right off the top of my head. I might mention that in 2 of these instances, through divine intervention, I did not go home. I lived in 500 South Kelton in Westwood. This was in the 1980s, or mid-1980s. And I had a door, I lived in a triplex, and my door opened up onto the street. The landlady who lived behind me on the 2nd floor came home one morning, 1:30 in the morning, and here's 2 guys sitting across from my front door in a car. And one of them gets out and walks over to her, "Do you know where Ted Gunnerson lives?" And I told her, "If anybody ever asks about me, you don't know me." And of course she said no, she didn't know. Well, she told me that the next day. And I made some phone calls, and I learned that there was a contract on me. And fortunately, I do have some good sources, and it's kept me alive. But what it really has kept me alive is on that particular night, I didn't go home. I stayed at a friend's house at the last minute. So I say it's through divine intervention that I didn't go home on that particular night. So one of my contacts says, I used to work with, he gave me his name, who is known as the cocaine king of the West Coast. Let me go talk to him. Let's go talk to him. So there were 4 of us, and we went to talk to the, quote, cocaine king of the West Coast. And we go in, the fellow comes to the door, lets us in. We had an appointment, it was on a Monday. He escorts us into the parlor, and then he takes us from the parlor into another room, and we sit down, and a little dog comes in about this big, and smelled all of us, and sat down at my feet, and went to sleep. And the, quote, cocaine king of the West Coast comes in, looks at the 4 of us. My dog likes you, I like you. And I'm saying, I'm sure happy about that. To myself, of course. So the cocaine of the West Coast tells the other 3 to scat out of the room and sits down with me. And he says, how many children do you have? Well, I know what the message meant. You know, if you screw up, your kids' lives are in danger. Then I told him, and then he pulls this Artist's Conception. He had a copy of the Artist's Conception. And he said, who gave this to you? And I said, if you're going to do harm to him, I'm not going to tell you. I'll take the heat myself. And he was kind of miffed about that. He said, I didn't say I was going to do anything. So I said, okay, promise you won't, and I'll tell you. So I told him the story about the accountant and so on and so forth. And he said, okay. He said, let me make a phone call. I'll be right back. So he left the room, and he came back. He says, you're right. You got a hit on you. I can take care of one of them. I can't take care of the other one. I said, I got 2 hits on me? Yeah. So I said, well, take care of the one, and I'll see what I can do about the other one. And so he left and came back again. He said, okay, I made a phone call. Don't go home or to your office until Friday. This was Monday. So I lived in a hotel room that whole week with a gun under my pillow, and I didn't move. I paid cash for the room. That was before you had to furnish identification. And it's kind of interesting because every time somebody walked down the hall in the middle of the night, I would wake up. And it was after that that I, by the way, that hit was taken off, thanks to him. He called me later and asked me to do a favor about 6 months later, and I won't need to go into that. But the point of this story is divine intervention. I didn't go home that night. A friend of mine said, stay with me this night, and, we'll go from there. And so anyway, I ended up I had some friends drive me to Dallas. I remember I slept in the back of the car, in the back seat of the car, for like 21 hours. That's how long it took to drive to Dallas, because I hadn't had any sleep in a week. And then while I was over there, I'm saying to myself, I got to get rid of this other hit. This is all New World Order stuff. This is all Illuminati. Okay, they put hits out on people all the time. Don't bat an eye. So I'm over there, and I get a call from a fellow in Los Angeles. Come over, I want to talk to you. And this particular person had some pretty good contacts, because he knew about my situation. He knew I had 2 hits put on me at the same time. And long story short, this particular person was able to take the 2nd hit off of me. That was just one. On another occasion, 1986, I said to myself, I've had enough cops and robbers in my life. I'm getting out, and I'm going to go in business for myself. Divine intervention, again. The good Lord wasn't going to let me get out of this work that I'm doing. And I invested every dime I had, and I lost it all. And so I had to go back in to private investigation work. Didn't have to because I had a pretty good retirement check. So this fellow, I was living with my business partner and his wife and kid. My business partner went overseas, went to Argentina, I think it was, and he was gone for a while. And then my daughter had a road trip, and I house sat for her. And on that particular night, an individual, and I found out later his name was Bill Mincer, known as Charles Manson II, came into the house about 11 o'clock. She was on the third floor, it was a tri-level, and heard him coming in. And the dog went bananas. She closed the door, went to the telephone to make a phone call. Didn't work because the phone down in the kitchen had been taken off the hook. And she sat there and waited it out, got her gun out. He didn't come upstairs. Again, I made some phone calls, and I didn't go home that night because when my daughter came back from her road trip, I was staying at her house, and we decided to watch a movie at the last minute. So, divine intervention. Absolutely no question about it. And the other two probables are, I don't need to go into them, but there was a fellow who was hanging around my P.O. box for quite a while, and I'd have to send somebody else in to pick up my mail. This is all New World Order, as I said a few moments ago. This is all what they do. They kill people. And Kucinich, not Kucinich, but I forget his, the Congress, huh? No, there's a congressman from Ohio, I think it's Kucinich. Yeah, he has asked for an inquiry into the CIA hit teams that are operating in this country today. Okay, he's asked for an inquiry, but nobody's paying any attention to him. That's just one. I can't tell you how many illegal burglaries, illegal entries I've had into my home. It's like Grand Central Station. They're in and out of there, and it's unbelievable. I took a trip when I was in Nebraska. I was gone for about 3 weeks. I came back, and I had my research, 500 boxes of research over a period of years, stored in the third bedroom. They helped themselves to 200 boxes of my research. Okay? They're in and out of my car on a regular basis. I can, right here in L.A., I parked down, I remember parking downtown, and I came back, and they do this all the time, turn the direction signal on. I start the car up, and the direction signal is on. I had my car stolen twice. I had my brake lines cut. I have had 2 windows shot out when I was standing nearby. They were intimidating me. They weren't real bullets, fortunately. They were air bullets. And that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to intimidate me. I've been poisoned in Las Vegas. I was poisoned. And what they did there, the only way they could have poisoned me is they had the condominium next to me, and they were pumping poison in through the air ducts. I had my right front tire come off I was driving between Omaha and Lincoln, 60 miles, 75 miles an hour. The right front tire came off. Highway Patrol came, looked at it. It was John DeCamp's pickup truck, by the way. I had gone from Lincoln to Omaha to talk to a source. And the only way they would know that was by tapping John's telephones. And I found out, the Highway Patrolman looked at it, he says, hey, your lug nuts have been loosened. And they tried to loosen the lug nuts on the left front tire, but somebody must have interrupted them because they weren't successful there. They wanted both tires to come off at the same time. My mail's been opened, diverted, and intercepted. My phone was cut off once. And I called the phone company. I said, hey, you discontinued my phone. Why? And they said, well, we sent you a bill. You didn't pay it. I said, well, where'd you send it? They sent it to a fictitious address in Florida. Never heard of it. I've had mail disappear. People written to me, and I've never received it. Surveillances are almost daily occurrence. And what I do is I do U-turns on them and get around behind them and chase them. And they tried to intimidate me. Look, I was in a gun battle in Memphis, Tennessee at the airport. If they're going to intimidate me, they're not going to intimidate me. I'm not afraid of them. I've dealt with terrorists when I was in the FBI. And I remember when back in about 90 or 91, they put a dirt bag out, just parked across the street, maybe 4 or 5 cars up. And I would see them there, and I'd put on my gun, go out and get in my car, drive by at 3 miles an hour, stare them down, do a U-turn, 3 miles an hour, stare them down. Then I'd park in behind them. And they couldn't get out of there fast enough. One of them ran a red light. Then I chased another one and cornered him on the street, blocked him, and I reached under my front seat like I was going for a piece, and his eyes got big as saucers. And I was on a street that went up the hill and down. It was one way. I went up and down and parked at the bottom of the hill. And then he started coming up, and I was watching in the rearview mirror. I could see the top of the car. And when he saw me, he stopped and backed up the wrong way in a one-way street. By the way, I've got some pretty good license numbers, a lot of license numbers that I'm saving. My business has been sabotaged, Virginia McCullough. I've had telephone taps. I sued GTE back in the 80s, got an out-of-court settlement. I've had threatening phone calls. I came back from a trip once, and I got up in the morning. I was looking for a file on a desk, and I had a phone call, 827. The voice said, male voice said, "Did you find your file?" Click. They had a hidden camera in my house. I was gassed on the freeway, attempted gas on the freeway. They gassed my webmaster, Clarence Malcolm. I've interrupted 2 attempts to steal my car. I've had flat tires. In one instance, I had 3 nails in the same tire. That's a little more than a coincidence, I think. I've had my gun stolen. I had 4 guns stolen out of my house in Nebraska. I sleep with a gun under my pillow. I got a combat magnum. And one day, just a couple of years ago, I check it regularly. I checked it, and somebody had come in and taken the bullets out of it. So if they came in on me, I was going to have to throw the gun at them, I guess. Cameras, they'd taken pictures of me. My webmaster was hit with uranium-235. I know for a fact I've had a trash cover on me. My computer has been sabotaged. I've been expelled from the Ex-Agent Society. I talked about my plans, the disinformation program, McCullough, Horowitz, and so forth. Those are just the life of a person who dares to take them on. Also, I might mention that in the early 1980s, I had 4 investigations on me. I know because I applied through the Freedom of Information Act. And one of the reports came, they sent me back. It wasn't anything significant, a couple of pages on a report. And they said, in the interest of, quote, national security, we can't give you the full file. But it's kind of interesting because one of the reports at the end, it said that they consider me armed and dangerous. Okay, well, I am armed and dangerous with knowledge, right? Thanks. Thank you, sir. Pam Fawcett. They put a girl on me, Pam Fawcett. DEA and the FBI. I dealt with her on the phone for 6 months. She was in Modesto. Tried to set me up on a drug deal. And she called me one day and said, "I need to talk to you." She came down. I met her at the time. I think it was Hughes Market or Ralph's Market across from this place on Ventura Boulevard, the Sportsman's Lodge. And she told me that the whole story about how they had tried to set me up through her and drugs through her. And I said, "Pam, why are you coming over to my side now?" I had the names of the FBI agent and the DEA agents who dealt with her. She said, and I was trying to help her on the phone. I tried to help her with her 14-year-old kid. He got in trouble down in Florida. And she said, "I woke up the other morning and I realized you're the only honest son of a bitch I've talked to in 6 months." Those were her exact words. Pam took a polygraph, passed it. And last time I talked to her, she said there was a hit on her. Oh, here's Kucinich, Dennis Kucinich, that was it. This is in American Free Press, April the 6th, 2009. Dennis calls for probe of U.S. hit team. So, what do we have? Well, we have the NSA and the FBI have teamed up with AT&T and Verizon to spy on U.S. citizens. This is all documented. President Bush reauthorized a secret program more than 30 times to spy on Americans since September 11th, 2001. U.S. government NSA has tapped its entire internet system. FBI can hear everything you say even when cell phones are off. The code word for this program is Quantico. All payphones at Grand Central Station in New York are tapped. The Bush administration began spying on Americans 7 months prior to 9/11. The President authorized our intelligence agencies to database every citizen in the U.S. 7 months prior to September 11. Project Endgame, the rounding up of 775,000 Americans by the shadow government, began on February 24th, 2009. Two of my very closest friends, very frankly, have disappeared. I don't know what's happened to them. We have thousands of guillotines that were shipped in here from Japan. In Atlanta, Georgia, we have 500,000 caskets that hold 40 bodies in each casket. We have 1,000 internment camps around the country. We have sensors on the major highways every quarter of a mile. I talked to one of the installers. You're right here in California.
What was that? Sensors?
Sensors. It keeps track of your car.
Sensors, okay.
Sensors, yeah. Did I pronounce it right or wrong?
You're right.
That right? Okay. Yeah, I went to school in Nebraska, so I have an excuse sometimes, okay? We have the Patriot Act. I don't tell you about the Patriot Act. I mean, I'm sure you're aware of that. Okay? The Constitution violations and the amendments that they've done away with through the Patriot Act are, you got them here someplace. All of them. Probably all of them. Yeah, here they are. The Sixth Amendment, right to a speedy trial. Eighth Amendment, no cruel and unusual punishment. 13th Amendment, punishment without conviction. It took 262 Republicans, 77 Democrats to kill the Bill of Rights. This is all part, as I said earlier, of the terrorist movement. I told you about the guillotines, the caskets. We have U.S. troops in the United States, Holloman Air Force Base, Air Force, German Air Force. A lady came up to me back in the 90s and said that she was from New Mexico. She deliberately dated a German airman from Holloman to find out what they were doing here. He said, when the revolution starts, we're going to strafe the cities. Beatrice, Nebraska, where I lived for a short period. Town of 12,500. They have an on the base there, they have an airport. The airport is the runway is more than a mile long. There's no commercial airplanes come in there, it's all private. They are expanding the length of the airport. Why? So bigger planes can land there, I guess. But there's no commercial planes coming in, over a mile long now. The chemtrails, one of my sources told me that the planes in the north, Midwest, chemtrails are out of the Air National Guard, Lincoln, Nebraska. I made a trip to the airport, and I found 4 giant airplanes with no markings on them on the runway at the Air National Guard. Another informant told me Fort Sill, Oklahoma is what they're using in the southwest United States. Okay, that kind of gives you, I think I laid the foundation pretty well, didn't I?
Yeah, really.
Yeah. Okay, that just tells you what they're after. Okay, I'm not the only victim. There's thousands of Americans out there. By the way, I've been shot with a laser beam twice. in my back. Fortunately, they're not very good aims. And my webmaster, Clarence Malcolm, had been shot also.
Of course, one of the best ways for you to stay alive is to
Yes.
do what you're doing.
Really?
Reduce this, oh, absolutely. Reduce this to video, get this scattered all over the country. They won't touch you because if you're dead, that validates everything you're saying, see? So
Well, they poison people.
publicity is the best thing you can
Yeah, one of the things that was happening to me after, I must tell you about General Joy. I found his name all through the diary. And what was really strange was that George had mentioned him early on in the marriage, but then after a certain incident at Camp Lejeune, which I think is very interesting relating to tailhook and something that I did there. I'll tell you about that if I can remember. I called, it took a lot for me to get General Joy's phone number because the Marine colonels were not going to tell me because they knew I was investigating. So nobody would tell me about General Joy. I called a person in George's address book who was a general, pretending that, I was updating my Christmas card list.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to find Jim Joy's telephone number. He said, oh, he's up there. He's running morale, welfare, recreation for the world, a payoff job with the mob. And he's living outside of Quantico, and here's his phone number. So I call him up, and keep in mind, my husband is infamous, Princeton graduate, chief of staff for Al Gray, who runs all the dirty tricks for the Army. Linda Tripp worked for Carl Steiner, who was a partner of, Jim Joy and Carl Steiner and my husband were the triumvirate in Beirut.
Okay.
And Linda Tripp worked for Carl Steiner down there
This would be approximately...
I think in the 80s. She and her husband were both Delta Force duos. They send them, but then they divorced, so that broke up that. But she's a dirty tricks person, Linda. Anyway, so I call General Joy and I say, General Joy, this is Kay Griggs, and I'm George Griggs' wife, chief of staff under Al Gray, head of half the world, dirty tricks, special operations, wet ops. And he goes, no, I don't believe I know your husband. Exactly his words. And I'm taping it, by the way, because they took my tape. They started coming in and putting sticky stuff and running my, just mind jagging me.
Putting sticky stuff
On the tapes, and they would put the tapes on different, they would go to a lot of trouble. They would take things that I said on one tape and put it on another, and they were having fun with me psychologically. But I taped this conversation with General Joy, and I said, well, that's really strange, General Joy, that you don't know my husband, because I'm sitting here on my bed, and I'm looking at my husband's diary that he kept the whole time he was in Beirut. And you're in there almost on every page, you're in there a lot. And you're going over to Cyprus and Rome, and you're, getting money for weapons, and, and then they're going to Tel Aviv, and they're doing this and that. And I said, you mean you don't know my husband, George Griggs? And you're a Marine, and he's a colonel? He went, oh, that George Griggs. Because he knew I had the diary.
I see.
Then he said, oh, Miss Griggs, let me call you back. Let me call you back. So he had to confer with General Sheehan, General Joy, General Gaiman, General Hartzog, and his little cabal, particularly General Gray and General Krulak. So he called me back, and he was just like a little puppy dog. He said, oh, Ms. Griggs, I'm going to be in Norfolk on the, let's see, the night of the 5th, 6th, and 7th. I'll be at a Morale, Welfare, Recreation meeting at the Marriott Hotel. And I would like to meet with you when I get there. You know, I'll be getting in around 5 o'clock, and I could we could go to dinner, or you could come and have breakfast next morning. We could eat, you know, blah, blah, blah. Or 11 o'clock, you know, now I have to speak at this luncheon engagement. You're welcome to come to that. Or we can meet at, he went through every hour of the whole time. He could not have been more insistent about meeting me if he'd been my father, you know, my birthday or something. And so
you did meet.
I did, but I was afraid of him because I knew
this
he
is
was
General
an assassin.
Joy.
General Jim Joy, the one who got Noriega out of Panama.
Mm-hmm.
He and Sheehan, the one who was behind the whole operation in Panama. This is a powerful guy. He and Carl Steiner, Mutt and Jeff. Waco, they trained all the guys in Waco who went and did what they did to David Koresh. They're the ones behind all the black helicopters and Sheehan. They're the ones, you know, doing all the stuff down there at Kathy McDaniels down at, you know, in Fort Polk, Fort Hood.
There's something new on me. Kathy McDonald, Daniel?
Kathy McDaniels had a little talk show. She's a wife of the daughter of the mayor down there at Fort Polk,
Okay.
the little town outside of Fort Polk. And there were a lot of unusual things happening. And because she was talking about it, excuse me, they took her radio show off the air. And they tried to, it's a long story, but anyway, so General Joy, I got in contact with the NCIS.
That's Fort Polk in Louisiana.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. But I met with the NCIS guy and a Marine that I just met cold call because I was kind of worried about what would happen to me, you know, meeting him. So may I go to the ladies' room?
Certainly. Matter of fact, Steve suggested
I've
that we
had to
break.
sort of go to the late. That's why I've been sort of antsy.
Steve suggests we break at 5 after, and I think it's a good idea. Let's break and we'll pick up. Right, we're just a little bit of a recap here. All right, a little bit about your background, about the psychological profile that these guys look for. Let's see, we've discussed the diary. We've discussed Kadak and Alexander
Robinson.
Robinson. Could read my writing. Thank you.
I have a picture of Kadak.
Yes, I noted that. We're going to inject that. We'll inject. In fact, we should have a little session here where we just go through pictures at the tail end of this.
Yeah.
Picture. We discussed tail hook and.
You know what tail hook means, don't you?
No, what is tail hook? Uh-oh. I got a feeling.
Yeah.
Is it a homosexual reference?
Yeah, sure.
Really?
Sure.
Did you know that,
Sure.
Steve? Isn't it something?
Yeah.
And the average person on the street has no idea.
Yeah.
You know, it's like Watergate. Well, the Watergate Hotel, that makes sense. And tail hook probably is some reference to, you know what I honestly thought it was? When you refuel a jet or something.
It is. But you look, see, the planes look like this. Because, see, I was told this by Jerry Unruh. And Jerry Unruh was a captain when I met him. We were just partying. You know, I had a group of gals, and we were all school friends. And everybody hung around this place called Poppy's in Virginia Beach. It was the place in the mid-'80s when I was at the Virginia Center for World Trade. Well, Jerry was in there. He's an intelligence operative with Scrokoff, Crow, you know, this whole McFarlane, Ed Wilson, who's a really good friend of my husband's, who's a really bad guy. anyway, they're all some of them are doing this Rush River Lodge thing, you know, which Angleton was doing, where Woodward would go to these big orgy parties. And George went to a few of those. But this, you see, is the plane, and it kind of looks like that.
Okay.
And it refuels.
Uh-huh.
See, that's what the hook is for.
That's called a
refueling.
tail hook.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
But it has a double meaning.
A double entendre, sure.
Because and I went to the preceding show 2 weeks ago, and they had the tail hook booth, and I have some stuff, I don't think I have it with me, but tail hook souvenirs, because they are really trying to promote that, you know, the charitable function of that organization.
Yes, of course. Now, the fact that that cover got blown on those tail hook things, that was a
Hagen.
major snafu, right?
She had to try very hard to get that out.
That was at Camp Lejeune?
No, I think it was in Las Vegas.
Okay.
But, oh, my thing went on in Camp Lejeune before tail hook, and this is why I got flagged.
Oh.
Because I stopped all the go-go dancers in the officers' clubs, and they got very mad with me.
Ooh.
I can tell you that story. It's true.
Yeah, but why, you didn't realize what you were doing at the time?
No, I was just incensed, you know, that they would allow topless women, young girls, in the officers' club dining room while I was trying to eat late one night. And George says, well, you know, you just have to get used to it. If you think this is anything, you ought to see what goes on in Okinawa. Well, this was 91, 90, it was before tail hook. And the Lord is always with me. Sometimes I don't know where he is, but this particular night, it was about 9 o'clock, and I was starving. And I was really mad because his reaction wasn't, I'm sorry, this is offensive, do you want to go in town to eat or something? He didn't do that. He attacked me. It was a chance to educate me the way they were educated.
I see.
Get used to it, bitch, you know,
Yeah.
excuse my French.
That's right.
But that's really what he was trying to do. Well, they were all young married officers. Now, I worked at the chamber, and this is taxpayer money. This looks bad. They had, you know, wedding bands on. And one of the guys, two of the guys goes out with one of the girls. So I'm going, after having said, don't you see anything wrong with this picture? And getting no background. I thought, oh, boy, I've got a camera in my pocketbook. I am going to see Marty and Oogie, my old roommate from St. Mary's, little Episcopal Junior College in Raleigh, North Carolina. And I said, whoa, little Lucille Ball comes out. And I just kind of grabbed that little camera with the flash, and I get me 3 little flashes of scattering people. So
Just
light.
because the camera's going off?
Yes. So that said to me, it proved to him, God, truth is light, light is truth. You know, hey, this isn't. I mean, God proved it. I didn't do it. I didn't argue. I just took pictures. They scattered. Then what happened?
What happened to the pictures?
Well, he tried to grab my camera,
He,
my husband.
right.
But there were still some men in there, you see, and 2 of the girls. And they were looking at me like, you are, the girls were probably thinking, oh, you know, but the guys, they saw older colonel, chief of staff here, wife. It was bad from the perspective of me being a wife, witnessing this, being ordered to shut up. So I took the camera when he wanted to grab it from me, and I went like this. I mean, it was real battle time, major. My brother was a championship wrestler, you know, and I don't know anything about holds, but I knew this was self-preservation time. And I just said, well, I'm going to the ladies' room, huh?
Yeah.
So I went to the ladies' room, and I hid the darn thing. And he wanted to know where it was. We had a major battle. But the end thing that happened was I wrote a nice letter, found out the name of the manager of the club, because I knew protocol. I knew you can't go and just really mess everybody up. And I sent a letter saying, is this normal to have it, to the club manager. But I sent copies of the pictures and the letter to the wife of the general commander of the base and the wife of the commandant
Oh, man. You wanted to get in trouble.
with the pictures. No, I mean,
Oh,
I'm
you thought you were going
helping the wives.
Yeah. The wives, at this point, no doubt, are privy to all this stuff, right?
Yeah. See, I thought in the real world, this is what you do. Somebody. But what happened was I went home, and the wives were meeting there, and I told them what I had done, and Carol and Milla said, "Oh, no, you didn't do that, did you? George won't get promoted." You know, he was trying to make general. But Louis Buell had already died. He wouldn't have made general anyway because of Sue. I already found out about that. But I didn't know that at the time. So, but Charlotte Moore, whose family are better educated, and she's kind of the leader of the pack because she's more rational than the rest of the wives. She said, "Kay, thank you very much. We appreciate what you did for us." And then all the rest of them kind of, they're like little puppets too. But then I found out from Brooks West that I was flagged. That General Gray had me marked as a troublemaker.
Gotcha.
So after that, no more stories while he's drinking. It was he was having to balance them and me. He was, I think he was challenged by me because he knew that I was a free spirit. He didn't understand Christ. He didn't understand what my boundaries are, but because he was a little bit intimidated by my sense of freedom and my, openness, which comes from a complete understanding of where Christ is in my life, and I follow in his footsteps, but I'm a free spirit because I'm created independently, as we all are, and my husband never had that ability to be free from the time he was a teenager.
Because early on, he was made captive to these other matters, the homosexual encounters and the shame that brings and the control. So he was a bent twig early on.
Yeah. And he had the Saudis were beginning to pile into Russell House at the Hun School in Princeton, which is the school that my husband was in for 4 years on scholarship. He never saw his parents in 8 years. Now think about this. His parents were shipped to California, I believe strategically so that they could control his mind.
Okay.
He was too poor to fly out there. I think he did go one time when he was ROTC on a flight that took him forever and a day to get out there. But he had an uncle later on who bought a house in Princeton when he was in college. So he had a little bit of nurturing. And this uncle became his father.
Okay.
And this uncle's 2 sons and the next door neighbor became his wife. He knew he had to marry because of what he had gone through, and it was, I think, so shameful and so hard on him that he married right at graduation day, practically, from Princeton University, where he had 4 years in ROTC. And he was in the Cap and Gown Club, which, as I mentioned before, is an intelligence sort of football kind of scholarship club. But what's interesting is my uncle, who was in intelligence, Ben Delaney, went through exactly the same hoops. I was thinking, when I met my husband, this is, and it probably was God in many ways, But I thought, isn't it amazing that Uncle Ben, who was the football quarterback star for Princeton, the one year they won the whole national thing, he went to the Hun school. His father and mother were both killed, or something happened to them. And I think they were a fairly well-to-do, prominent family. He was handsome, wonderful, just a neat man. So he went on scholarship to the Hun. And he went in with crew and all these other things. He was in cap and gown. He played on the football team. He wasn't a cheerleader. My husband was a cheerleader. But they were in exactly the same pattern. ROTC scholarship. They left ROTC. They were dependent on the government, on the intelligence community, selling weapons to whatever country. I know the country, but in other words, they were doing work for the joint under the table all these years.
Okay, and directly under whose instructions to sell these weapons? Do you know that?
Yeah.
Okay, who would that be?
Well, it's the Israeli Zionist group in New York.
Mossad.
Well,
what would they
yeah,
say?
but everybody thinks Mossad, like they think CIA is just a bogus sort of thing. It's really Army intelligence that does just about everything. They run a lot of the psychological profiling, which is done at Quantico with the FBI. It's all a very small group. Harvard professors connected with, the Tavistock and Dar es Salaam, and there's a sexual perversion group in Vienna and one in Colorado. I think that little girl was part of that experiment, who was
John
sort of,
Benet Ramsey?
Yeah, because I had some...
Well, that raises an interesting point, because here's a high-profile murder that goes nowhere. No investigation, nobody's pinned. It just goes on and on and on.
The parents are involved in that program.
But somebody higher
High
up
level.
is protecting them.
Absolutely.
And the same thing that you're describing about the military.
Sure.
If you're in the clique, you can get away with murder.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Murder, literally murder. And I had a group of visitors. I used to be set up by the State Department, my husband, who had power in the State Department, through both Caspar Weinberger and, his whole crowd. Caspar Weinberger, George Bush, Colby, Casey. My husband was in that clique. He was in the Princeton Marine Corps clique. Rob, Warner,
You're talking about Senator Rob.
Yeah, they're
and
all
Warner.
Marines. Pat Robertson, all 4th Marines. They're all involved in this. They know, they're running everything.
Now, you mentioned Pat Robertson. You're talking about the 700 Club, Pat Robertson.
Yeah, there's a power thing there. And it's all male, it's all white, and they know the murders are going on. They're surgical, they're strategic, they're political. But what I was going to tell you is I was used because I was the most gullible in high school. And I'm very, very spiritual, and I love people. So, and I was driven to meet all these people from all over the world for some reason. So they would feed me people because they knew I would react. It's kind of like Monica and Bill. I think they put Monica in there to have something on Bill. That's my own feeling. Sarah McClendon feels the same way. Because...
And Linda Tripp was there to guide the situation.
Absolutely. Of course. Linda Tripp was Delta Force. Linda Tripp was trained by Carl Steiner, who's in the diary with my husband. Carl Steiner is called a snake, and he tried to trip up Schwarzkopf. He was trying to take the whole Iraqi thing over because they had been baiting, using the Israeli rogues in Turkey they were having little zigzag wars. It's all to sell weapons. It's all about weapon sales. It's all about drugs. It's all about funny money.
Making money.
Of course. And the head, Krulak, who is the Commandant of the Marine Corps, his father, Victor Krulak, worked with this Russian, Czechoslovakian double agent who was worked with Al Gray, who was enlisted at that time, rose right up to the top because they were involved with Butcher and this whole crowd that was trying to pick fights. And they were not, they were Army and Navy together, joint. And George kept saying, George calls them the members of the firm. He calls them the members of the firm. I've heard the Brotherhood. They're very close. And it's a small group, and it's very hierarchical. I had Caspar Weinberger's bodyguard farm me when I was at Sarah McClendon's.
Now, farm you.
Yeah, that's
Means
a term that they use.
Where they cultivate?
They well, not cultivate, but just want to find out kind of, they're doing profiling on me. Women are hard to profile because we're very easy. We're very easy if you understand women. And I think they need more women in human intelligence because we'd solve a lot of these problems like overpopulation or whatever it is very quickly. Because we're the ones who teach the men how to talk, how to communicate. We think on 20 levels at once. You know, we're very spiritual, we're very practical, all at the same time. And they make mistakes by pegging women as crazy when really they're very anxious to solve problems. They're just very frustrated to see a lot of wacko things going on that don't need to be going on, but the guys don't see it. So with my husband and so forth, I was used, they profiled me. They knew I loved international people because I'd already demonstrated that. And there was a group of sexual psychiatrists from Vienna who came over. I have pictures of them. I was their escort. George was already gone, and I was intrigued that they were still sending me people.
Okay, now you referred to them as sexual psychologists?
Yeah, there's a whole range of psychiatrists who study perversion, sexual perversion. Harvard, Yale, Johns Hopkins, and this Colorado group. Dar es Salaam, where they train the black African terrorists. They train them in interrogation. They train the JAGs in interrogation methods and so forth. And a lot of these guys got their experience in Vietnam. Intentionally, they took these little boys. That's what they're doing in Bosnia right now. They're training future leaders in perversion. They have a school. The British have a school that George was working with in Indonesia for a year. My husband was setting up there was already a program on East Timor, a little place there in the mountains, that had been set up by the Australians during World War II. It was involved, I think, with Burma and, you know, some of the killings that were going on in China and so forth. That T. Parker Host, this man who now controls my husband with Bob Edwards. T. Parker Host, this is how they got together. T. Parker Host, I knew when I was the assistant director of the Virginia Center for World Trade. I was the first woman on the board of the Foreign Commerce Club. I was very involved politically, and I was having a ball. And I met T. Parker Host through someone else. I was the chairman of a board of all these international shippers and brokers. I was just a, sort of a glorified secretary, public relations person. Now, T. Parker Host was the Finnish consul and at one time he'd been the Norwegian consul, the Icelandic consul. I thought he was a really nice guy because he was outgoing, he seemed Virginian. I didn't know that much about him. But it turns out he has one shipping agency when I meet him in '85. He knows my husband's profession instantly because he brags about being with the mobs. The mob runs the port of Norfolk. I mean, it's terrible to say, the bankers, and then they have I can't say that.
You can't say what?
No. The ports are run by, it's a homosexual hierarchy.
Okay, it makes, that's not objection.
Well, okay. And in Norfolk, it's Walter Chrysler, Phil Hornthal, they have the rich ones, and then they get the little ones in by introducing him to the big guys. It's like George met Einstein. Einstein was in that little ring that the Saudis were in. It was a very elite.
No,
Tamu,
you're saying Einstein?
Albert Einstein
Okay.
was in that little Princeton ring before he died.
Okay.
George, they partied together. Anyway, so the Norfolk crowd runs the port. It's very organized and so forth. And I knew the person who was running the Maritime Association shipping agency, very nice man who was that way. But I didn't know it, I went out with him. I like him very much. I mean, he's a very nice person. But
And completely homosexual.
completely. But he liked me, and I thought he was wonderful.
Many homosexuals are very
he's a
engaging people.
very nice guy. Well, his best friend was T. Parker Host. He lived with him for a while. Well, I didn't think anything about Parker because, he'd been married and had a couple of sons, and I thought, well, this is just a guy who's moved away from Newport News for some reason and settled in Norfolk. I thought it was unusual. He didn't have any friends. I didn't know. But it wasn't because of that. It was because Parker had some questionable associations with mob figures, with assassins. He was in the Burma Special Operations Command. He liked living a dangerous life, and he bragged about it to others. My husband and he gravitated to one another. And I thought it was wonderful because my husband didn't seem to have any friends. So I sort of fixed him up with Parker. Well, Parker's the one who did me in, Parker plotted, and it's a long story, but basically, and this sounds petty, but I wouldn't go out with him. And I'm not saying I did anything that was, it's just that he wasn't my type.
Obviously.
Well, I mean, but he just was, he's boorish, he's loud, he's kind of rude.
So you're saying even just in a social context?
Yeah. So what happened was, because my husband is so close to Bush and McFarland and Scrowcroft and all these guys, Parker starts getting in with my husband's friends and cultivating them. And he goes from having one shipping agency to dotted all over the place. He goes from being a Democrat in petty little Virginia politics and being the Icelandic Finnish consul to having big shipping deals going through Iceland and Finland and Norway. And my husband's setting up deals in Moss, Norway, which I was the president of the Sister City Association. I was being used while they were setting up, shipment places, transshipment places. I mean, I was witnessing all of this, and it all came back to me, just boom, like that. But Parker, it was so interesting. We had a hearing. I had a hearing with my husband, That very day, George Bush was in town. My husband was in town. My home was broken into while I was in court. Very strategically, I was called by a Marine colonel named Jack, who is very involved with the maritime shipping business, and he knew that I know a lot about that. He called me and invited me as a guest of his to attend the George Bush huge banquet with John Warner while my house was being robbed. My car was sabotaged that day. And guess who introduced George Bush? T. Parker Host. Now, he made it to the big time.
You know, Alexander Haig is another one. You can help us out to any coffee or
Thank
anything
you.
with that.
Yeah, he's a friend.
Alexander Haig, he rose from nothing to top dog just overnight. That's because he's in the club.
Oh, of course he's in the club. Now, how he's in the club, you see.
Now, all these guys.
Henry Kissinger, Heinz Kissinger. Oh, I have a story.
Oh, we all suspect Henry's a queer.
Oh,
but,
yeah, I have a first-hand story from Bob, who was there in Cambodia with Heinz.
Okay, you call him Heinz.
Henry.
Yeah, okay.
Heinz. His real name is Heinz Kissinger.
Okay. We'll straighten up. We got a light that fell down, boys. Did you notice that? We got to be alert to notice all these little things. And that's very hot, by the way.
Haig was an
Just
army.
a second. Let's get this straight here, because
Right.
that is a hot light, and you'll burn your fingers if you don't touch it. By the way, as long as we're kind of in an unofficial break here, did you have to read my note while I was writing it?
See just part of it.
When I was writing it, or only when I held it up?
When you held it up over here,
Okay.
I made an adjustment.
Well, I was starting to write. I wrote "widen her a bit," and then I looked up. Well, lo and behold, he's done it. So I thought, well, maybe he could read this over my shoulder. That's cool. And then
No, and he did.
Oh, you saw it and interpreted.
I've seen you.
you could read it from here.
Oh, that's cute. This is, oh, y'all are wonderful. What a team.
And
What a
then
team you are.
you could. Thank you. Yeah. Okay.
Actually, all you gotta do, if you write it, just tip up a little bit,
Okay. Because the thing of it, when she's illustrating something and using her hands, well then seize on that and open it up so that we don't lose the lower part of her hands. You know, not far enough down to where, strategically we get out of focus, but just, that's cool. All right. We're back, and this is good. Let's